Ladies and gentlemen, we are live. This is episode 11 of the Superheroes podcast, and I have got Dr. Neville Wellington, general practitioner, diabetes reversal expert extraordinaire, director of the Noakes Foundation and Nutrition Network, here to talk about how to reverse diabetes. Neville, what is happening?
How's it, Jono? Fantastic to actually see you again and catch up with you. And thanks for inviting me. As you know, we've been on this journey for, 8-9 years now, and it's just continuing to ratchet up, and we've been loving it. We're seeing so many fantastic changes with people. So, just wonderful. So thank you for having me.
Pleasure. So I wanted to start off with you in the 90s. Okay, you're studying medicine. None of this has happened yet. What do they teach you about diabetes or type 2 diabetes and diabetes management?
Wow. Yeah. To be honest, very little, in terms of diabetes management. In fact, even in the early 90s, I graduated in 1990, actually right on the cusp. And at that stage, diabetes was starting to take off. Type 1 was there. Type 2, we sort of were seeing it coming into practice. I started in practice in 94, and diabetes wasn't a massive thing, but we was just starting to see quite a number of patients coming to the practice, and kind of felt, went to some talks, and in fact, I did one of the early studies on one of the long-acting insulins, and that kind of helped me get a handle on what diabetes was, and how to actually, what the current treatment was, and what the current kind of talk was. And the main thing was with diabetes then was, well, it's irreversible, it's progressive, you basically need to treat with more medication, and it's not it's not if somebody's going to need insulin, it's when they're going to need insulin. And it was really, there really wasn't much kind of talk around lifestyle, around monitoring. There was very, very little understanding, actually. Certainly from a GP point of view, maybe more on a specialist point of view. But we certainly didn't understand the nutrition side of it to any degree. And we never talked much about nutrition.
Yeah. So you're sitting there as a GP and you got patients coming in and, they're sick, right? They're feeling lightheaded. I don't know what the very early telltale signs are, but then you prescribe them drugs. What is your experience of being a doctor, meeting someone who is just going to get sicker and sicker until they die?
I think there was this feeling of kind of, where does this end? Can we change this? Can we turn this around? And speaking to patients and saying, well, you've got to exercise, you've got to lose weight, but not really knowing how to get them to do that. That was really, so we kind of assumed and send them to the dietitian, obviously. The dietitian would give them the right diet, but things were not getting better. That was I never saw anybody who actually reversed their diabetes, as it were, who changed things around, or got any decent advice. And you kept wondering what, and obviously for us, the low-fat diet was kind of seen as the way to do it. Everything had to be done low because it's.
Oh. You lost me. There you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I lost you for a second there.
That was.
Yeah, we didn't even understand the cholesterol theory at the time. So we, but cholesterol was becoming the big thing. Yeah. And somehow that trumped everything that you did, So you were worried about the cholesterol, but you weren't worried about the diabetes so much.
So just to get this right, they thought cholesterol and diabetes were inextricably linked. Is it linked?
Well, there definitely is a link if you look at diabetes. So if you understand, diabetes basically causes heart disease, right?
Right. Yeah.
that we know. Everybody, diabetes. The high proportion of patients with diabetes are going to get heart disease, heart attacks, peripheral vascular disease, strokes. That's a well-known fact. It's indisputable. The problem is start saying what is actually causing heart disease. So the theory of cholesterol has come around and said, well, cholesterol seems to have caused heart disease. So if diabetes is causing heart disease, cholesterol must be part of it.
Right.
And somehow, because we can treat cholesterol, or we think we can treat cholesterol, we must treat the cholesterol first, and the diabetes is not such a big thing. And that kind of has been the talk. And then, we had the very early studies on cholesterol that seemed to show massive improvements. Of course, people have now said those studies were a bit flawed, and if you reduced an LDL by 1%, you got 50% improvement in heart disease. Well, it's not actually really being completely proven. Whereas you've reduced HbA1c and you reduce hyperglycemia, you get massive improvements, 28% improvement in heart disease and peripheral vascular disease and stuff like that. So it's kind of got put together because they both seem to be causing it. But in fact, as a clinician now and as a diabetologist, as it were, I think we know now that definitely heart disease and diabetes, that's the problem. And we know the mechanisms even more now, because that's been shown over the last 20 years, the actual mechanisms of damage to cells and endothelial dysfunction, and that has been shown to be caused by high glucose levels and insulin resistance.
Can you go into that a bit? I'm hoping it's not above my pay grade, but what is the go easy on me, what is the mechanism?
Well, I'll give you the story that I try and give to most patients, just to try and keep it as simple. But basically, when you have high glucose levels in your bloodstream, the problem with the body is that once your liver is damaged and it's overproducing glucose, when you eat carbohydrates which release glucose, there's no real place for the glucose to go but into the bloodstream. It just spills over into the bloodstream. So you get these high peaks of sugar, and often last for hours on end after you've eaten carbohydrates, because you just can't metabolize this high level of glucose. But the problem is that a number of cells take up glucose from the bloodstream, like your endothelial cells, and the cells literally are lining the inside of the blood vessels. By osmosis. They don't have mechanisms to stop high glucose levels from going into the cells. And then nerve cells, tendon cells. So when you've got high glucose levels in the cells, you need to metabolize that glucose. You need to kind of get rid of it. And your mitochondria are basically your little engines that metabolize glucose, convert it into ATP, and you use that energy. But the problem is, when you've got so much glucose in the cells, you can't flux through the glucose through the mitochondria, and you start to get rid of. You have to use other pathways. They call them polyol pathways, sorbitol pathways, protein kinase C, and literally those pathways actually are quite inflammatory. Now we know that inflammation is kind of your big issue, but literally from the mitochondria you start bleeding off free radicals or extra electrons that literally attach to other oxygen. For instance, oxygen gets converted to oxygen 3-. That's a free radical. It can damage other things. I suppose one can think of it like little bombs going off in your blood cells.
Right. Okay, that's cool.
In your cells, and those cells get damaged and need to be replaced and need to be renewed. So you've got this happening all around the body, but it's not happening. It's not happening in every single cell, but it's in the major cells, like your cardiovascular cells. So anyway, you to repair that, you need to lay down plaques and new cells, and that's happening all the time. So that can cause little plaques to build up,
right?
And narrow your arteries. So that's one aspect. I mean, it's happening all over. Your brain is obviously getting fried as well by these high glucose spikes.
So the plaque that we all see in that, the classic artery cross section with all that plaque buildup is actually a response to inflammation, and not just like butter going into your vein and sticking to the inside of the vein. Okay. Yeah,
it's exactly that. And the problem is that you'll use oxidized LDL will be taken up by the macrophages, which are being laid down there to actually like heal the endothelial lining, and then because you see LDL there, you think, well, LDL is the cause of this damage, but actually LDL is part of some of the healing mechanism there, because there's a whole process. Our bodies are incredibly complex. So So it's the high glucose levels initially that are causing inflammation that set off this whole thing. So that's my understanding. And that's certainly from a lot of papers that I've read. So I'm not just taking this out of the thin air. This is science at molecular level, at cellular level.
Cool. So before you knew all of this, you're minding your own business as a GP, and it's like 2010, and this lunatic sports scientist comes along and says, no, we've been doing it all wrong. I take back everything I said. And actually removing carbohydrates from the diet is the way to become healthy, not removing fat. And then you experience this controversy. So how did you kind of get hooked? And maybe start with what your initial response was.
So, fascinating thing that happened here. So it was very much serendipitous in terms of when Tim came out and my kind of light bulb moment. And in fact, I was doing a diploma in diabetes diploma, postgraduate diabetes diploma through the University of Cardiff. And I decided in the 2008, 2009, I really was, this diabetes thing was coming, and we were seeing more and more patients. And I thought, look, I'm not really that good at treating this anymore. And, what I thought was right just doesn't seem to be working. Maybe I just need to go and study it a bit more. And I'll find out how to actually reverse this and give patients hope and stop this whole disease thing. And so I was on my second year, it was 2011, 2012, of doing this postgraduate diploma in diabetes. And in fact, I was in the module of cardiovascular disease, and somebody introduced us to this paper by Michael Brownlee, the pathobiology of diabetes, which actually explained all these mechanisms that I've just explained now.
Yeah.
And I was, Tim had actually sent us an email or a letter, in fact, addressed us as practitioners, right sort of near the beginning of 2012. Said, I've been on this journey for a year. I've been doing this stuff. And I actually brought it home, and I said to Tracy, Tim sent us this letter, a bit surprising, but, I respect him. He's a great scientist, and I've always wondered about it. She looked and she read the letter and said, oh, this is Atkins. And she said, crazy. But we did Atkins a while ago, and it sort of worked, but, I'm going to do it again. So she kind of got onto low carb. And I said, look, I just don't have time to read this and look through all these references, but I'm going to, when I finish with my studies, I'll go back to it. And literally it was about October when I was doing this whole thing on pathobiology and that, and a light bulb moment suddenly came. And I thought, I'd read his letter, and this whole thing about, carbohydrates cause glucose spikes in your bloodstream, but you just got to give more medication. And then I suddenly thought, what happens if you reduce carbohydrates? It was like a light bulb moment. And I thought, oh, my flip, Tim's right. Literally was like that. So that was for me, both these things just interacted at the same time. And it really was a light bulb moment. And then what happened is that I'd had a patient who badly controlled diabetic, who one day came in and his HbA1c had been running at 11%, nothing ever changed, and suddenly it was at 7%. And I said, what the flip have you done? And the other thing was that his triglycerides had gone from 30 down to 1. Okay. I said, what have you done? You haven't increased your medication. And he sort of quietly said to me, no, I've been following Atkins. And that kind of like was, what? I mean, I didn't even understand.
You should be dead.
Yeah, exactly. Like everybody tells me. So I was really intrigued. And so I then thought, okay, let me. So I finished my course, and I took Tim's letter again, and I went through every reference, and I read the books that he said, and I read the articles that he wrote, that he referenced, and I actually thought, this is really interesting. Then I started seeing one or two other patients coming through and having changed their lives, lost weight, reversed diabetes, or reduced diabetes, improved it, and that. And I thought, well, I've got to do it myself. So I've just got to see whether I can even sustain low carb. Because surely, if this is right, then it should work. If it's not, then I'll know that I can't do it. Now, I must say, things for me changed. I lost weight. I'm not diabetic or anything. My irritable bowel syndrome went away. I was training for August. That got better. I did my best time the next year.
Wow.
Just
Wow.
just crazy things. And I thought, okay, this really does work. So then Tim had then started doing a radio program on CCFM, which is what I listened to. And I responded on that program once or twice. And then I phoned his rooms and I said, look, I think we need to meet. I want to just chat to you about some of the stuff I've been doing. And so we met, and we had a half an hour appointment, which turned out to, I think, being almost an hour and a half, 2 hours. And then things just started rolling from there. So that was my start, yeah.
That's your start. And then so you started applying it in general practice. So, and I know that you're the head practitioner at your practice with what, like 10 other doctors?
Yeah, 12 other doctors at the moment.
12 other doctors. So then you implemented this, and how did you start treating patients now?
So, I mean, initially I started with just seeing what patients were doing. My first thing was to actually get patients to actually start monitoring their glucose levels properly. I thought, if I'm going to do this, I need to have more data. And so I started giving patients glucometers, instructing them to start testing their glucose levels before and after meals, and to actually see what they were doing. And very quickly it was obvious that carbohydrates push up your sugar levels. I mean, it's not even a question. So, whether you eat bread or chocolates or, dare I say it, oats.
You didn't.
and it spiked your glucose levels. And, so that was very obvious. So then I started saying to them, well, Prof Noakes has come out of this low carb. I really started seeing changes in other people. Do you want to look at trying this? So then I had a number of patients trying to change it. And, I had a really good diabetic educator as well at the time. I'd then also been involved with CDE. CDE is the Center for Diabetes and Endocrinology, and done their course, and then the diploma in Cardiff, which they had organized, I must say. So I'm very grateful to CDE, for the amazing help they've given me. And I then started just doing more and more patients. And as I saw the results, I started getting more and more confident in it. And I spoke to my colleagues about it. I think they eventually got sick and tired of me talking about it. But, for them, it's taken a bit longer for them to actually start to see the results and even have their own patients kind of working on it. But more and more, my colleagues have come to the party. I mean, they'll refer patients to me, or they just do it themselves. And it's really amazing to see that. So yeah, that's been an ongoing journey now. And we're learning every day.
Actual definition of, I think I'm losing connectivity from time to time. So sorry if it's a bit buggy, everyone who's watching. But what is actually reversing diabetes? Like, and we know what a 4-minute mile is. What is the metric? How do you classify yourself as having reversed it?
So I'm really going to go along with what the Virta Health and them have kind of defined. So if you look at what is the diagnostic criteria for diabetes, and then you can then use that as your kind of reversal thing. So around the world, every diabetes association will say that if it's a fasting glucose level above 7, a HbA1c above 6.5, or a glucose tolerance test, which we do much less of nowadays, where your level is 11.1. So that's kind of defined as, when you have any of those parameters, you're defined as being diabetic. Okay. So if you bring glucose levels down, now you may not get the fasting glucose levels well below 7 initially, but that eventually comes if you follow this for a while. But the HbA1c below 6.5% has been seen as kind of the cutoff for reversal. And I'll talk a little about remission as well, just because that's kind of also a buzzword. So criteria for reversal would be off most medication except metformin, HbA1c below 6.5%. And I mean, the fasting, you're not going to always get it below 7, but it will get there if you carry on. And pretty much that's it. It's around 6.5% most people are using as the criteria, and then below, and then getting people off medication, but mostly kind of metformin last. Some people get off it. For me personally, it's probably a little bit high, 6.5%, to be honest, because actually normal is under 5.7%. Prediabetes is registered between 5.7 and 6.5 by all the world associations.
Okay.
I know Tim kind of says 5.5%, so it's, you know, but if you go with what's actual definitions, it's 5.7. So my aim actually for most patients is to get them below 5.7%.
Great. So what you're saying is, but so from being full-blown type 2, you can go back to pre-diabetic, and that's having reversed diabetes, but then you want to get out of pre-diabetes too, and that'll, okay.
Absolutely.
So, and so what is the turnaround time on that?
3 months.
3 months. And
yeah, maybe 6 months if you've been really badly controlled and you work hard. Maybe take a little bit longer. But I mean, Virtu were doing it within 10 weeks. They check people after 10 weeks. So I mean, if I do it HbA1c, and I mean, I can recent patient. Okay, actually, one of my worst control. I never thought this guy would be able to do it. Referred by a friend of his who had basically he reversed it. I mean, his friend I saw the other day. He's 5.2% now, and I've said you can stop everything, and he's done that in 3 months. But he wasn't that badly controlled. This guy had 13.4%, and after 3 months he's 6.9%. So it's not quite at reversal yet, but I mean from there to there in 6 months. In 3 months is incredible. I mean, one of my very first patients was 10.6%, and by the end of 3 months was 5.9%. So he was reversed.
Sure.
So it does depend on when you see the patients, how quickly they can do it. But I would say if they're really good, they can get pretty close in 3 months. You know, if you're sort of running an HbA1c of 7.5, 8, even maybe 9, you can probably get down to 6.5. Remember, it's just the amount of damage that's done to the red blood cells that's got to be renewed.
Sure. And so we'll get into remission now, but just while you're on that, so the Virtus studies that I've read say that it's 60% of their patients were able to reverse it within the first 12 weeks. And then after 1 year or 2 years, I can't remember because they've got a 1 and a 2 year report, but they said it was only 50. Now, obviously, as a coach, knowing how people operate, my immediate, like not judgment, but opinion goes into compliance. But do you know whether there's data or even feedback from them on whether that's compliance or biology? The 60%, like what happened to the other 40%? Sorry, is actually what I'm asking.
Yeah, so I think, look, that's a good question. In fact, it's something I would love to have spoken to Sarah Holberg about, because I would also wanted to know that answer, because it's not completely apparent from what they've said. My feeling is that there's probably compliance and possibly a bit of biology. Some people have been so far down the road that they actually are almost sort of an insulin kind of not negative. I mean, they don't have enough insulin. There's just too much damage to the pancreatic cells, so they're just not getting the insulin responses. Whereas we know, and we've seen this. I mean, I've seen this. If I get a newly diagnosed patient, they've got the best chance of reversal. If I see somebody 10, 20, 15 years down the line, much more difficult. Firstly, to get them to change their habits because they get given all the wrong advice anyway, and they find it difficult to change. And secondly, you know, just the physiology, the pathology is worse for them, and you've got to reverse that as well. So my feeling is that it's probably those long-standing diabetics that have struggled to get into that full-blown reversal, as it were, and possibly just struggled with society, you know, the things on offer, doctors' advice that they get from other doctors. They see, you know, that kind of all can kind of like upset the apple cart, I guess, or whatever, block them from pushing it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot more to the graph than just the blood. You know, it's a life. It's a whole life.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
What is the difference between reversal and remission?
So for me, remission, remission would be almost 100% normal, no medication, under 5.7%. And, you know, the problem with remission is that people then think it's, you're so well, you're cured, as it were. So that's probably the next thing would be cure. Remission for me would be back to almost to normal, not diabetic level or not even pre-diabetic level, off all medication. But it's not a cure in that you'll be able to eat carbohydrates as much as you want. I don't think that's possible ever for anybody who's had diabetes or pre-diabetes or anything like that. They will always have that genetic predisposition to having a diabetes if they suddenly start eating carbs.
Yeah, sure. Got it. So now you're doing this in general practice, and like we were saying before we went live, because I'm so in it, like I just assume that everyone's doing it. But what is the uptake? Like, is it, I mean, obviously Cape Town's like the epicenter, I would say, where it's become relatively normal to do it. But what is the climate out there in general practice? Like, are people prescribing this, or is it still very much what is it like? Are you still a heretic?
Yeah, as I said, you probably do feel a little bit like you're the only one doing it. And you know, I haven't had a lot of pushback in general. In fact, I've had a lot of more people being curious. Probably the kind of worst pushback is from one or two cardiologists.
Right. Okay. What's their complaint?
Well, I'm not using huge amounts of statins, and I'm questioning the LDL cholesterol hypothesis. You know, everybody knows it's LDL. You know, everybody knows it's cholesterol, apparently.
Right. Yeah.
And you know, so the fact that you even question it you must be stupid. But
okay.
But that's the only pushback I've had. For the rest, I've actually had quite a lot of interest in it. I think the biggest issue for most of my colleagues is how sustainable is it? Because they get told, well, nobody can stay on it. You know, the trials show that people fall off, and even Virta Health shows that people are starting to drift off. And I suppose that's answer to that really is that when you're living in a high carb environment and every society is around that, it's really difficult for people to kind of maintain it as easily. So I guess so from the average GP, they're kind of saying, well, it's not sustainable, so we may as well not even try or start, because and part of that is I think that's just kind of more like we can't really be bothered kind of syndrome rather than
yeah, it's frustrating because it's like, because diabetes isn't sustainable either, you know. No. Like let's just get that out there.
And let's just ask as well, how many clinical trials on low fat, high carb diets actually show reversal of diabetes?
How many is it? Is it nothing, you know? Yeah.
Virtually.
And so, and I mean,
sustainability in that, yeah. I mean,
the sustainability of diabetes is it's not sustainable. Even the world economy won't cope with the current growth rate, right? Aren't we looking at like the USA going bankrupt in 2027, or I don't know, maybe it's been pushed out, maybe not, just because of the cost.
The numbers are scary, and the economy, the cost of this disease it will bankrupt the country if you're trying to treat it like on the current status, and especially with the new medications coming out, the cost of those medications. You know, we're not talking small numbers anymore,
right?
And you know, the pharmaceutical companies push that hard, so it's just not sustainable.
So, how do you think we scale this treatment? How does it get to the people who need it? You know, because at the moment you like, you know, with these little niche pockets everywhere doing it. What is the roadmap that you see?
So obviously from our own point of view, we need to make sure that we are doing it correctly and we are getting it right. So that's the first thing. And the next thing is really trying to get the message out to our own colleagues and for them to start seeing it for themselves. And that is definitely starting to happen. You know, I'm not actually, I really don't want to, I wasn't trying to knock my colleagues at all about diabetes, because there are quite a lot that are really starting to do it and interested. And personally, I'm getting quite a few inquiries, doctors phoning, doctors writing to me, doctors sending me patients. And you know, and as I interact with them, slowly they become more and more interested and begin to understand it. So I think that's the first thing for our colleagues to start seeing patients that have actually done this, and that's starting to trickle into society now. Then, of course, the patients tell the patients, they tell their friends, and you start to see that happening. So that's kind of the first little wave that's happened. The next thing is really actually training the colleagues and teaching them. And that's really our next phase. And that's where we're in at the moment in terms of what we do through the Nutrition Network. And
right. So just, I'll stop you there because I want to get into the training and everything. It's super exciting. Right. But for a lot of the people out there, there's some confusion about the difference between the Noakes Foundation and Nutrition Network. And I know that you're a director at both, so maybe you can explain the difference.
Okay, so obviously the Noakes Foundation was set up really with the goal to be improving kind of the whole low carb environment, I guess, and looking at ways to improving it for society, for people in general, and looking at some of the research. So the Noakes Foundation wanted to do research, as well as getting the message out there, as well as affiliating with people who are going to be following with the low carb environment, and then looking at the whole thing of how can we make this sustainable, especially for those who can't afford eating this way. And out of that arose Eat Better South Africa, which is one of the sort of arms of the Noakes Foundation. Yeah. And that was really to a whole lot of interventions that have been done over the last few years in low socioeconomic groups to really see whether this is sustainable. And we've got some really good studies from that, and some work showing that actually, yes, it is, and actually it really can make a difference in the sort of in people who in the low socioeconomic, especially those who are overweight, diabetic, hypertensive, just struggling. So that was part of it. And the Nutrition Network then was born out of the Noakes Foundation as well. It's basically the organization. It's a for-profit organization, obviously, because we need to make money, which feeds back into the Noakes Foundation to really help the Eat Better South Africa and the research and all the other income that's needed for the Noakes Foundation. Cool. So, as you know, the Noakes Foundation does get income from various sources, right. Donations, and your books obviously help set that off. Real Meal Revolution, and then obviously a lot of other books, and then through affiliations with various low carb Banting kind of products. But the Nutrition Network then really became focused on teaching and training other practitioners, nurses, dietitians, coaches. So that's where we've kind of gone to, and that's really going to be the arm that's going to hopefully sustain a lot of the other work that's been done.
That's great. So the moment we've all been waiting for is now. I must tell you, when this came out, I was like, this is gold. This is going to give, because a lot of guys, I'll tell you a bit of my story. So we have coaches, and we have a keto program at Real Meal Revolution. And one of the things that's preventing us from growing is actually that there are not enough people out there who know how to reverse diabetes and manage a keto transformation. So we're looking for coaches and doctors, and the bigger that network is, the more we can grow. So when you guys started training, I was like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. We don't have to worry about training people anymore, because there's like an expert organization doing it, with much more medical legitimacy than like Chef Jono. And you know,
amazing.
but
I mean, non-medical people are doing this and doing it well. So it's not...
exactly. And so when I heard that you were doing diabetes reversal training, I was like, oh my goodness, this is absolutely incredible. Like people need to know about this. And so I know that you offer it for allied health workers, which I think is coaches and various other sort of health professionals who aren't. But you also offer it to nurses and doctors and other people. Is that right?
Yeah. We've got a dietitian course as well.
Yeah.
And then,
but so tell me about how you deliver this diabetes reversal course, what it entails, and what you can do once what are you qualified to do once you finish?
I think initially our first thing was just to try and get material out there. So it's a training program that, firstly, it's online, and it is behind a paywall, so you do have to pay for it. And we've had I think over 1,000 people do it already. Sure. So the initial thing was our sort of initial course that came out of our low-carb conference in 2018. We filmed all of those talks and then put them online, and then used that as our base, and have subsequently added a number of courses, including the one that I really have enjoyed is the diabetes reversal one. It's a fantastic course. There's a good couple of speakers. I mean, Tim, obviously, Prof Noakes, Marco Gazella, myself, Hasina Kaji, Tamsin Murphy, and then we've got some fantastic patient stories as well on there. And then we've produced other courses. We've just done an obesity reversal course as well, or obesity course, I think we called it. And then one for dietitians, which I thoroughly enjoyed. There's some fascinating work done by a number of brilliant dietitians around the world. So as we've added a number of courses to that. So firstly, once you've done those courses, you get a certificate to say that you've completed these courses. It's not we would like eventually to get to a certified course diploma, and next year we are launching a proper certified course where we're going to be spending some time with participants, getting them to do some studies and doing some projects, as well as spending time actually getting them to make sure that they're up to speed with everything. And wow. I mean, we've had incredible participants on these things. I mean, doctors, from right across the board, from specialists to people who are training, nurses who've got medical backgrounds and that who've done incredible work. So I think sometimes I kind of pinch myself because these guys know so much now.
Yeah.
and we've obviously collected work from so many of the guys who've published stuff, so the Verta stuff and the David Unwin stuff, Marco Gazella, and they've all participated for us, and it's been fantastic.
Yeah, so Eric Westman on there as well. So did you get some content from Duke University, or from Eric?
Just from Eric, I think, as far as I'm aware. He added for the initial course. He was fantastic because he was in South Africa a couple of years ago, and we had a bit of a roadshow with him. So he gave us some stuff, and it's just been wonderful because his work with Atkins and the original Atkins work, and then doing some of the initial clinical trials has been groundbreaking. I mean, Westman. I mean, all the names kind of escape me eventually because we just are absolutely blessed to have really the top of the top low carb people contributing to the courses.
Absolutely. So so now we're sitting. So as far as the ecosystem goes, we've got doctors who can train. So I just want to make sure. So if I'm watching this video now and I'm diabetic and I want to find a doctor who knows like this, who understands this narrative, where do I go? How do I get hold of a doctor who I can trust, basically?
No, good question. I think we've got a list on the Nutrition Network. This is something that probably Maz can help me with as to. And I know that Marika Saboris, who's kind of does quite a lot of our media stuff, she's got a low carb map, and so you can look on there. Crazy thing is, people have found me even through Diet Doctor because they've also kept a map.
Yes, that's cool. Okay, so here it's actually nutrition-network.org,
Yes.
and then you've actually got a practitioners tab here where all of the a lot. Yeah, like just too many to count, like hundreds of doctors here. And then if you want to do the diabetes reversal training, where do we go? Do we go?
So you need to go, I think at the top it says courses, and you basically need to register, and then
got it. Apply now.
Yeah.
Okay, and then there are all the courses. All right, so apply now. /nutritionnetwork.org, nutrition-network.org/apply-now, and then the doors are open.
And the doors open. You just put your credit card in, and
yeah. I don't often quote Donald Trump for many reasons, but I read his book, The Art of the Deal, which apparently was totally not written by him. But there's one quote in there which I'll happily mention, and he says, "When you get free advice, when you take free advice, you get what you pay for." Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah,
it's a brilliant quote because it's true. There's so many people scouring the internet for information, and in the past, when we were knowledge poor, it was worth paying for volumes of information. But now, every man and his dog's got a website and a blog and whatever. So what you're paying for is curation. And so, I take my credit card out all the time to buy information because I'd rather pay someone to give me the value and save me the hassle of going through all the fluff. So yeah, don't feel bad asking people to pay. They must pay.
No, it's good stuff, and it's all been it's all in our stuff. We've put it together. It's original content. It's nothing. We haven't taken stuff off the internet. We haven't gone and taken YouTube clips and stuff like that and put them on. We've actually gone and filmed it ourselves, done it ourselves, and it's amazing work. I'm really amazed. And the incredible thing, John, I mean, this is that no matter who gives interviews or speaks on here, they've had this journey, and all of us have seemed to come from a different journey, and yet almost end up at the same place. And the pathobiology, the pathophysiology, the way that things work, the medication deprescribing, whatever it is you're doing, it kind of all ends up there, and it's quite amazing. That in a sense helps to corroborate what is being done, because actually, if we all were sort of sitting in the same room and came up with something together, you'd be questioning around it. But I'll be watching Mark Cookers and I think, my goodness, he's doing exactly what I'm doing. David Unwin's doing exactly what I'm doing, but I've never spoken to them in my life before.
Yeah, that's madness. Hey?
Yeah. So the guys are getting there, and Jay Wortman, I mean, same thing. You just, it's amazing. So that to me actually really gives it incredible kind of kudos, as it were. That we're on the right track, because if I'm not the only one that's found this.
Yeah, well, totally, and it shows. I mean, it's growing, so it's not. Yeah, it doesn't seem to be slowing down at all. So, Neville, it's been a pleasure, an absolute pleasure, and I can see there are loads of comments. I've made the mistake of reading comments during an interview before and just been totally, basically fallen off the bus. So I'm going to read them now and get back to them. But thank you so much for joining us. And if the link's not there already, I'll post a link to all the training. And I hope you train thousands and thousands, and hopefully one day millions of doctors to reverse diabetes. It's a super powerful thing to be doing. And it's just fantastic to see that you're doing it. So thank you for coming and sharing your story and your work with us. It's been an honor.
Sure. Are you going to do some comments, or are we going to leave?
We can look at comments quickly. Let's just see what we got. Okay, so some of the comments were from Nutrition Network, posting links and stuff. How do we set up an appointment with Neville Wellington? Do you want me to, maybe not on the recording, but do we send people to your practice?
Sorry?
Do we send people to your practice?
I'm afraid that's the only way that I can see patients. I mean, I do see patients, fortunately, so patients can find my details online. And I'm in Cape Town, for those who, just in case you're not sure.
Great. And do you do online appointments?
I have done for occasionally. I mean, ideally see patients face to face, but I mean, we've actually have recorded some patient actual courses. We're going to be hopefully doing that next year sometime. So that'll be part of that. So we may well end up doing some of the stuff online. And I mean, I think that's going to become the future really is looking at online stuff, but we haven't really got that set up yet. So I don't want to, at the moment, I'm still working face to face and kind of one-on-one, but we need to change that. Yeah.
It's coming. It's in time. It will come. Awesome.
Yeah.
Neville, look, the other questions are comments and stuff that I can get back to very easily. They're not specifically addressed to you, so we'll get there. But thanks again, and geez, just keep it up. It's so great. All right.
Well, thank you, John, and thanks for having us. I mean, it's been great to catch up with you again, and I'm sure we'll be doing a lot more of these things. So keep well and all the best.
Cool, man. You too. Cheers. Bye.